The chilling grin of his reflection, a smile he hadn't made, sent a jolt of pure terror through him. The room, already unsettling, now felt actively hostile, the air thick with an unseen presence. As if on cue, the overhead lights began to flicker erratically, plunging the apartment into momentary darkness. Each blink of the light was accompanied by a sickening lurch in his stomach, amplifying his growing dread. Then, a shrill, insistent ring pierced the oppressive silence, startling him profoundly. His phone, clutched tightly in his trembling hand, vibrated with an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, his thumb hovered over the answer button, a primal instinct screaming at him to ignore it. But a morbid curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need for answers, compelled him to accept the call. He brought the device to his ear, his heart hammering against his ribs, preparing for whatever horror awaited. A distorted, guttural voice, barely more than a whisper, crackled through the receiver, sending shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" it rasped, the words laced with an unsettling blend of menace and sorrow. The question hung in the air, heavy and accusatory, echoing the earlier whisper he'd heard upon entering. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead, his grip on the phone tightening until his knuckles turned white. Without a word, he slammed the phone down, the abrupt end of the call doing little to quell his rising panic. His breath hitched in his throat, his eyes darting around the room, searching for the source of this torment. But the silence that followed was short-lived, immediately shattered by another, even more disturbing sound. From the bedroom, the very room he had just fled, a familiar melody began to chime insistently. It was the distinct ringtone of his other phone, the one he kept on his nightstand, now calling out to him. The sound was a cruel, mocking taunt, pulling him back towards the very place he desperately wished to avoid. His mind raced, struggling to comprehend how a phone he had left in the bedroom could possibly be ringing now. A profound sense of violation washed over him, the feeling that his private sanctuary had been utterly invaded. He stood frozen, caught between the terrifying unknown in the bedroom and the chilling reality of his current predicament. Each ring from the bedroom phone felt like a personal summons, a sinister invitation he couldn't ignore. The flickering lights intensified, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and contort with malevolent intent. He swallowed hard, the metallic taste of fear coating his tongue, his muscles tensing for what was to come. His gaze was fixed on the bedroom door, which now appeared as an ominous portal to an unimaginable horror. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken threat, pressing down on him, making it hard to breathe. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he had to confront whatever lay beyond that threshold. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run, to escape. But something held him rooted to the spot. The relentless ringing of the phone was a siren song of dread, drawing him inexorably closer to the source. He took a tentative step forward, then another, his movements slow and deliberate, like a man walking to his doom. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight, each sound amplified in the suffocating quiet of the apartment. He could feel his heart pounding in his ears, a frantic drumbeat accompanying his reluctant procession. The bedroom door, which he had left ajar, now seemed to be slightly more open, beckoning him inside. A sliver of darkness within the room appeared to deepen, as if absorbing all light and hope. He reached the doorway, his hand trembling as he pushed it further open, revealing the room's interior. The phone was still ringing, its insistent chime echoing off the walls, a relentless, terrifying melody. And then he saw it, a figure seated on the edge of his bed, its back to him, perfectly still. It was wearing his clothes, a familiar shirt and jeans, an intimate detail that sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. The sight was a grotesque parody of normalcy, a twisted reflection of his own domestic life. A cold, detached voice, eerily similar to his own, broke the silence, its words devoid of any warmth. "You're early," it stated calmly, the casual tone utterly at odds with the terrifying scene. The figure began to rise slowly, deliberately, its movements unnervingly fluid and precise. He watched, paralyzed by fear, as it turned, revealing a face that was undeniably his own. But the eyes... oh, the eyes were not his. They were vast, empty pools of obsidian, completely black. There was no pupil, no iris, just an infinite void that seemed to swallow all light and emotion. A chilling smile, devoid of any genuine mirth, played on its lips, a mirror of the reflection's earlier grin. You weren't supposed to see me, it whispered, its voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated through his bones. The words were a confirmation of his deepest fears, an acknowledgement of an unspeakable intrusion. He stumbled backward, a guttural cry catching in his throat, his mind struggling to process the impossible. This wasn't a dream. This was a waking nightmare, a terrifying reality he couldn't escape. His doppelganger, with its soulless eyes, stood before him, a chilling testament to a fractured reality. He turned and ran, a desperate, primal urge for survival overriding all other thoughts, towards the apartment exit. His hand fumbled for the doorknob, his fingers slick with sweat, desperate to escape this horror. But the door, which had been there moments ago, was gone, replaced by a solid, unyielding wall. Panic surged through him, a tidal wave of despair, as he realized the layout of his apartment had shifted. Walls now stood where doors should be, and familiar passages had vanished, replaced by impenetrable barriers. This wasn't his apartment anymore. It was a labyrinth of fear, designed to trap and torment him. The chilling realization settled upon him. He was no longer in his home, but in a twisted, nightmarish parody of it. The whispers began again, soft at first, then growing louder, echoing from the darkened corners of the room. As the chilling grin of his reflection faded, plunging him into a deeper dread, the apartment lights began to flicker erratically. A sudden, jarring ring pierced the oppressive silence, his phone vibrating violently in his trembling hand. An unknown number flashed on the screen, and against his better judgment, he answered, bringing the device to his ear. A distorted, guttural voice whispered, its words slithering through the receiver. "Why did you come back?" A cold dread seized him, and he instinctively slammed the phone down, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the room. But the silence was short-lived. Another ring, more insistent, began to emanate from the bedroom. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging him to flee, yet a morbid curiosity pulled him forward. He cautiously returned to the bedroom, pushing the door further open, revealing it was now ajar. There, on the bed, sat a figure, its back to him, clad in the very clothes he had been wearing earlier. A wave of nausea washed over him as the figure spoke, its voice eerily calm. "You're early." Slowly, deliberately, the figure rose from the bed, turning to face him with an unnerving grace. It was him, an exact replica, yet profoundly wrong, with eyes that were not merely dark, but unsettlingly black. The doppelganger's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile as it uttered, "You weren't supposed to see me." Panic, raw and unbridled, finally consumed him, overriding all other sensations. He spun on his heel, bolting towards the apartment's exit, desperate to escape this nightmare. But the familiar hallway had warped. Walls now stood where doors should have been, trapping him. The layout of his once familiar home had twisted into an impossible labyrinth, mocking his attempts to flee. This wasn't his apartment anymore. It was a prison, a twisted reflection of his reality. Darkness, thick and suffocating, began to envelop him, swallowing the last vestiges of light. From the encroaching shadows, whispers emerged, soft yet insistent, repeating, "You left us." The words coiled around him, a chilling accusation, amplifying his terror and confusion. Just as despair threatened to consume him entirely, the lights flickered back on, abruptly and completely. The oppressive darkness vanished, and with it, the warped walls and the haunting whispers. Everything was normal again. The apartment, his apartment, stood exactly as he remembered it. He didn't hesitate, didn't question the sudden return to normalcy, didn't dare to look back. He lunged for the door, flung it open, and burst out into the hallway, gasping for breath. His legs carried him down the stairs, two at a time, propelled by a primal urge to escape. He stumbled out onto the street, the cool night air a welcome shock against his feverish skin. His gaze, still wide with terror, instinctively darted upwards towards his apartment window. There, silhouetted against the dim interior, stood a figure, undeniably himself, watching him. The doppelganger, or perhaps the true occupant, was inside, observing his frantic escape. Then, slowly, deliberately, the figure in the window raised a hand and waved, a gesture of eerie finality. The wave was not one of farewell, but of possession, a chilling claim to what was once his. He stood frozen on the sidewalk, the streetlights casting long, distorted shadows around him. A profound and terrifying question settled in his mind, heavy and inescapable. Which one of them had truly escaped the apartment, and which was now forever trapped. The cold reality of his situation began to set in, a creeping numbness replacing the initial panic. He was outside, yes, but the world felt alien, disconnected from his own identity. The face in the window, his face, seemed to mock his very existence. Every fiber of his being screamed that he was the real one, the rightful owner of his life. Yet, the chilling confidence in the doppelganger's wave suggested otherwise. He looked around at a familiar street, now imbued with an unsettling sense of unreality. Was this his world, or merely another illusion conjured by the entity upstairs? The whispers of, "You left us," echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain. He felt a profound sense of loss, not just of his apartment, but of his very self. The boundaries between reality and nightmare had blurred irrevocably. He was a man without a home, without an identity, perhaps even without a soul. The doppelganger had not just taken his place, it had stolen his essence. He wondered if anyone would believe his story, or if they would simply see him as mad. The thought of returning to that apartment, to confront the imposter, filled him with dread. Yet, the thought of leaving his life, his identity, to the doppelganger was unbearable. He was caught in an impossible dilemma, a prisoner of his own terrifying return. The streetlights hummed, casting long, lonely shadows that seemed to stretch into infinity. He was alone, utterly and completely, in a world that no longer made sense. The figure in the window remained, a silent, watchful sentinel, a constant reminder. His breath hitched, a silent sob catching in his throat as the full weight of his predicament descended. He was a ghost, haunting his own life, while another lived it. The doppelganger's welcome was complete, its sinister plan fully realized. He was the outsider now, forever looking in, forever questioning his own reality. The chilling grin from the mirror had been just the beginning of his nightmare.